We've got Deshaun Watson deciding to go to Cleveland. That's crazy. Just crazy to say, crazy to think. The Cleveland Browns, I mean, my entire life, they have been the worst team in football, arguably. Last couple years, they've turned it around. Years of getting a top five pick can do that for you if you hit on some of the right picks. And this is kind of the position they've been in. And it's kind of crazy how this went down because basically Deshaun was in between three teams that were in the same division. He was between the Panthers, the Falcons, and the Saints. And then reports came out that he basically said he's not interested in the Panthers, which makes perfect sense. The Panthers have a coach that's on the hot seat. And, you don't really know like what you're getting into there. New owner and everything as well. And then kind of looking at the other two teams, it seemed like the Falcons were the front runner throughout most of this process. He is from Atlanta, and all the rumors said that basically multiple free agents were waiting for him to sign with Atlanta or to go to Atlanta to kind of join him. Some of the names I heard were Leonard Fournette, Will Fuller, I believe Jarvis Landry as well. So those are kind of things that were just waiting to happen. Those free agents were waiting to sign with Deshaun, so he would have gone to Atlanta with some good pieces there as well. But basically, the Cleveland Browns, they were told yesterday that Deshaun's not interested in them. He kind of pulled out on them. And what happened was they went back to the drawing board, reached back out to Deshaun and his reps, and said, you know what? If you come to Cleveland, we will make you the highest paid player. I think it's the most guaranteed money of all time for an NFL player. And they gave him a it's a 5-year, $230 million guaranteed extension. The entire contract is guaranteed. To see this for a guy that had 22 women come out and make accusations about him is absolutely mind-blowing. Like, 22 women said regardless of if there's not going to be end up in any kind of criminal suits or anything, but it is a civil court case. But for 22 women and for a team to still go out there and make this player that paid, that's crazy to think. Another very interesting part to this deal is the first year apparently is only a $1 million cap hit. So if for whatever reason the NFL does decide to suspend him, the Browns are just off the hook for the first year. And even if he isn't suspended, the first year they're probably the most set up because of the cap space they'll have with him having such a small contract in year one. But going past that, it's basically $46 million guaranteed per year throughout the contract. And I mean, he just signed an extension like a couple years ago with Houston. So I know he still had multiple years left on this deal, and Cleveland decides to kind of pull him back into it, telling him that they're going to give him a crazy contract, which is, I mean, to come to Cleveland, like it makes sense. Cleveland also on paper is the best team as far as the pieces they have around him. So it makes sense on a football standpoint. And then, if you have to go to a crappy city like Cleveland, getting the most money ever guaranteed for a player makes perfect sense to do so. Although I do somewhat question Cleveland's judgment by giving him this kind of contract to a guy like he literally didn't play last year, and some say he still might get suspended for all of this. So that was kind of interesting. But as far as like what they gave up, they didn't even give up like when you understand you're getting a top 7, top 10 guy back as a QB, to give up 3 first-round picks, a 3rd-round pick, and a 4th-round pick. And then I think there's like a 5th-round pick swap or something like that. And then, and then I know Houston is sending a 5th-round pick as well. But they didn't have to give up any of the weapons, any players on their team to make this trade happen. He's going to the Browns like with all the pieces they have. They just got Amari Cooper. You got the 2-headed running back attack. Their O-line is pretty good. I know they just cut their center, so it's not like as good as it has been the last couple years, but the last couple years it's been one of the best in the league. They got David Njoku coming back on the franchise tag. And then the defense is just legit too. They've got Myles Garrett, who's one of the best edge rushers in football. So they get all that for just to only give up those picks for Deshaun. They're still going to have their second round picks. And then in all likelihood, they're going to trade Baker Mayfield. And he's going to get, they're going to get whatever picks for him back. And, realistically, I don't think that they get a first round pick. They might get a couple seconds or a second and a fourth. I do think if you're going to base this off of, I think Sam Darnold was traded for a second and the fourth last year. I think Baker is way better than Sam Darnold, so maybe you could get like a first round pick in 2023 or like a second and a third or something like that. But anyways, like Cleveland's going to be able to recap some of the capital they gave up for Deshaun by trading Baker. Obviously, they won't get all those same picks back. But it's just crazy for me to think like Cleveland, like, there's a couple ways to look at this. If you're looking at it from Cleveland's perspective, and you got an opportunity to get a guy that is that dude and truly is a really good QB, and you think that he's that much better than Baker, then I understand. And you want to make that push to be a Super Bowl team. But now that's what this has to be. If this Browns team doesn't go to the Super Bowl, doesn't win a Super Bowl, it's a huge flop. You're going paying this guy a ton of money who hasn't played football in a season, and you mortgaged your whole future as far as the picks go. We saw what the Rams did that a couple. They've done that multiple times recently. So if you don't end up winning big with this, then you basically sold out the franchise player that you had, the guy that you searched for 20 years to find. So before Baker Mayfield came to the Cleveland Browns, they hadn't been to the playoffs since 2002. And so he came in 2018 and they went in 2020. That's crazy. Like, Baker Mayfield was a key contributor to turning that team around. Like, people forget that. Like, the team was winless before he joined them, and he took them to the playoffs and won a game. I'm going to just list off the QBs that were in Cleveland the 10 years prior to Baker Mayfield, because it's pretty astonishing. The year before this is 2017. You had Deshaun Kaiser, Kevin Hogan, and then I'm just going to reel off the rest of the list. You got Cody Kessler, RG3, Josh McCown, Johnny Football, Brian Hoyer, Jason Campbell, Brandon Whedon, Colt McCoy, Seneca Wallace, Jake Delhomme, Brady Quinn, Derek Anderson, and Ken Dorsey. So you had 10 years, a decade of nobody at QB, basically. Like, the biggest name is RG3, but he was coming off of multiple injuries, and he wasn't healthy at this point in his career. Multiple of these guys were first-round picks. Colt McCoy, Johnny Manziel. I think, Brandon Whedon was for sure a first-round pick. So a bunch of top picks. Deshaun Kaiser was a second-round pick, I believe. So, the team just invested heavily at trying to find the guy, and they found the guy. His name is Baker Mayfield. He took them to the playoffs and won a football game in the playoffs against the division rival. And then they just got rid of him. They didn't want to extend him. I want to say, they said something along the lines of, we want an adult quarterback on our team. And it's just funny because it's you go from Baker Mayfield, for the most part, carries himself professionally. He's a great dude on and off the field. And you go and you trade for a guy who definitely has question marks. We'll see how the rest of the civil thing plays out. But, you got to question a man's integrity when he's got 22 different women coming up. These aren't just 22 women that he had consensual hookups with. These are 22 women that were massage therapists that had issues with Deshaun Watson. So Cleveland saw all that. They're cool with all that. Gave him a crazy contract, and now they're going to just toss Baker Mayfield, the dude who's done the most for the franchise in the last 20 years. They're just going to toss him out like nothing. And, I want to see Baker Mayfield succeed. I want to see him go to a team like the Colts. I think if Baker Mayfield ends up with the Colts and with Frank Reich, I think he could really, prove Cleveland wrong. With the right system, with the right pieces around him. I think Baker Mayfield's a guy who can win you football games, can take you deep into the playoffs. Obviously I would say the same about Deshaun, but if you're Cleveland, you just gave up all the capital. Like you could have extended Baker for way less than 46 million a year. Maybe you save another, I don't know, $20 million on that per year if you had Baker, and you could pay a wide receiver 20 million a year or whatever. Like I think that can definitely play into things here in the future. Maybe not year one. Maybe year one Deshaun plays and they go deep into the playoffs, but they for sure will feel like they're gonna for sure feel the contract eventually. But yeah, like I root for Baker. The guy has constantly throughout his entire football career, he has been doubted, and he has exceeded expectations. This is a guy who's a multiple time walk on, who became a Heisman winner, ended up being the first overall pick in the NFL draft. And the thing too is, like, a lot of people said, Baker's the first pick in the draft. Those expectations are completely gone. Now he has high expectations. He's not out here with a chip on his shoulder proving people wrong. And maybe they were right. But now things are certainly different because Baker Mayfield was the QB for the Cleveland Browns. They went through all that. He realized that Browns didn't want to extend him after 4 years. They didn't care about what he did for the franchise, and they were willing to move on quickly. This is like a day after Cleveland denied that they would even entertain the possibility of trading Baker, and they've already traded for Deshaun. Kind of rooting for Baker, and then we'll see how things pan out with Deshaun. It's certainly a lot to give up, but if Deshaun goes and has another 10, 15-year career and he returns to the dude that he was prior, then maybe they do get where they want to go as a team.